thank you for accepting my invitation and joining me for this episode of Standup Historian.
Oh, you are quite welcome.
Thank
My
you.
name is Vic, and it should be a very nice conversation.
I look forward to that. I have no doubt about it. So, I have to tell the listeners that I was listening to let me give you a hint, most banned show on earth, which is what Alex Jones calls his show. So I was listening to Alex Jones's show. A caller called in, and the conversation got into a point that the caller started mentioning a book, a very interesting book, which was Project Human Extinction, The Ultimate Conspiracy. And the caller mentioned Chris Thomas. And I said, yep, I have to find the book. So in search of the book, I am sitting here over the Skype talking to Vic, which is sort of like, is it correct if I say you are the curator of his work in the United States and keeper of his work?
I would say that I am a gatherer of information. I've never met Chris. Mm-hmm. I've never spoken to Chris. We have never corresponded via email. That being said, I belong to a global group where two of my members know him personally. So he is aware of me. Oh, okay. He is aware of the website. He does not have his own website anymore. It crashed many years ago. And he communicates via the two members to me, and we keep up with him and his wife, and we all our group collaborates.
You know, I have to tell you that you have done an excellent job, collecting all this information, organizing it, putting it in such a great website. Why don't you introduce the website for the listeners here?
Well, the redirect website address is the Chris Thomas Files. That's sort of a takeoff on the X-Files in a way, with a little tongue-in-cheek humor there.
I see.
But it actually, the ChrisThomasFiles.com actually redirects to my website, which is cosmicobservation.com, which is spelled cosmic-observation.com, and that it automatically goes to my landing page, which has got Chris Thomas's picture on it, a brief explanation of who he is and what he did, and then there is a list of his books, and then off to the side I have a list of all of the blog posts, essays, mini books, everything that he ever wrote that I could find and put my hands on. And I have all of the video interviews that I am aware of. I have all of the phone conversations that I am aware of. And I also have a documentary that was put out in 2009 that is not visible on my website because it's copyrighted material, but people can view it if they contact me and they want to see it. It's just that it can't be shared.
Yeah, I visited every single page of the site. It's great content there, a lot of information about Chris and his work, and also your work. You have your photographies in there, right?
Oh yeah. I've been blogging on and off since 2009, and I had another blog years ago that's gone, and then I started this blog up. 2012, 2013, something like that. And then I abandoned it for about 4 years. And then I came back to it and went on my journey of trying to gather up his information as much as I possibly could, because I had been picking it up piece by piece since right around October of 2013. That's when I discovered his information. And then I discovered the members that knew who he was. And it's been gelling since 2013, and I have been trying to get my hands on everything that I possibly can. There's also some information that are on two forums, which is how I met some of the group members. And some of the forum information I don't have. I actually need to go to the forum because there were some posts on two forums that I could actually harvest that information and turn those into essays, but I haven't gotten around to that.
Yeah, I bet it's a lot of work. And I was looking at some of the pictures or references to movies. You have a page under movies. You introduce some movies in there, and I'm trying to watch, especially the first one you have there, which is The Dying Swan.
Yeah, that's my latest post. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to watch that. I watch a lot of TCM. Hopefully I can find this one. Turn the classic movies and I have a grandson. He says, "Why you always watch uncolored movies?" And I'm like, okay.
Film noir. That's good stuff. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I have a variety of subjects that I try to do. I have videos. I have photography. I do historical posts. I do movies. I do music. I do a little bit of everything. And then whenever, at one time, I was doing a lot of Chris Thomas posts as far as his essays and stuff like that, but I kind of backed off of that. But I do get around to doing that sometimes just because I've got the landing pages with all the information on there, but I do occasionally do an actual post on Chris.
Yeah. So I strongly recommend visiting the website, which is cosmic.observation.com, and wealth of information in there about Chris and other materials. Okay, let's
actually it's actually cosmic-observation.com.
Cosmic-observation.com.
Yep.
Okay. Tell us about Chris, who he is, what he's done, some of his work. I saw, a list of his books and his work, which is amazing work there. And unfortunately, I was not able to find his book, especially the Extinction book, PHE, you call it. Yeah. I was not able to find that. So tell us about him, and let's talk about specifically this book, and let's see if we can figure out what is his mindset, how he sees the world, and how we can, learn from Chris for, just to live better or figure out what's going on around us, and don't look and see why I go around and I think why everyone is wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Help us, Vic.
Okay, well, I've been studying his material and listening to his phone conversations for years. I can tell you that in his interviews, he states it very clearly that he discovered that he had some kind of ability at the age of 7. He didn't really know what that ability was. He didn't know how to identify it. But he seemed to have answers to questions about things that he would have no life experience of, but he seemed to already know all of these things. And he tried, even as a kid, he tried to investigate what it was that he was gleaning from somewhere. And his mother was not exactly happy with what he was doing, and in his own words, being a very proper Christian woman, literally tried to beat it out of him. She was quite abusive. Yeah, she was quite abusive, and he just kind of set it aside and didn't really pay attention to it. There was another interview that asked him a question that said, "Well, with your abilities, I mean, the man was psychic at one time."
Yeah.
And another interviewer asked him, well, since your mother wouldn't let you do anything, did you just stop seeing people's auras and just stop listening or understanding what it was that you were getting information from? And he said, well, he goes, I didn't really pursue it, but no, I never really stopped seeing people's auras. And then he goes on to say, fast forward up into his 20s, he decided to actively pursue what it was that he was tapping into, and it turned out to be the Akashic. And I don't know if anyone understands what the Akashic is, but the word Akashic is a Sanskrit word from Sumerian times, and basically what it means is record. You'll hear some other psychics mention Akashic record, and you're basically repeating yourself saying record, because that's what the word actually means. He found that he called himself hardwired into it, because he could ask a question and immediately get an answer. So that's how it started out. He eventually ended up having to leave his family and have nothing absolutely to do with them whatsoever because they became so abusive because of his abilities. As he got older, he developed more and more abilities and got to the point where he could actually energetically heal people. He could scan people's bodies and see what their problems were. He was actually getting to the point where he had the ability to actually merge his hands into the human body. And I've heard him kind of half jokingly say, he goes, I decided I didn't really want to do that. He goes, that would scare the life out of me, not to mention the patient too.
Yes,
and the other interviewer started laughing. So he got to the point where he could scan bodies and work with the energy field of people to heal them. So he became a healer in his practice. And as he was doing that, his second book was called The Healing Book, and his first one was called The Journey Home. That was the first book that he wrote about reading things from the Akashic, and then The Healing Book came after that, and then he's got 9 other books. Project Human Extinction is his 6th or 7th. I can't remember in what the time frame
on the
is.
list of his. Yeah, he's definitely a prolific author with his books. I had heard about what you mentioned, that they could, enter their hand into other people's body, but I never knew, I just had heard that there are people they could do that, but that's fascinating to know that Chris was one of those people.
Have you ever heard of Lisa M. Harrison?
No.
Lisa M. Harrison, she's in Australia, and she has her own website, and she does her own interviews. She was the one that was doing the interview with Chris. She actually had 2 interviews with him. And she was remarking to Chris when he was talking about his ability to heal and scan human bodies. And she stated that there were things coming out of Indonesia where there were healers there that could actually do surgery on people, and the people were awake. They didn't put them under or anything. So they had a discussion about that. And she found that kind of fascinating.
Definitely. And I was just scanning, some of the information about him and the books and excerpts that you have from his books on your website. And I noticed, so he's a healer and he has these powers. He can send a query to the Akashic records and get the response back, which is fascinating. That's amazing. Some of his works falls into a category that nowadays probably they call it conspiracy theory, such as human extinction or other things that's happening around us about Anunnaki, slave race, and stuff like that. Tell us about that side of his work.
Oh, the story about the Anunnaki.
Yeah.
My global group, we continually laugh about all of this because it's just when the story of the ancient aliens and all of that stuff started showing up on the History Channel, all I could do was just shake my head. I'm like, you people have no idea what you were talking about. It's all speculation. And as far as the term conspiracy theory goes, that is a CIA coined term to make sure people don't investigate into things. So as far as that's concerned, I laugh at that too. Or holler, depending upon how angry they make me when they go there.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree with you, definitely.
Well, let me first state that Chris wrote 11 books, and right now 9 of them are permanently out of print. That's just the way it is.
Unfortunately, yeah.
The company went under. The family that printed up the books lost their farm in the process, and Chris and his wife made the decision that they didn't have the funds to start reprinting the books, and they just gave up. They still have a small quantity of the last 2 books, which is the Anunnaki Plan or the Human Plan, and then the last one is Synthesis. And he will tell you Synthesis would be the very first book that anybody would want to buy to get a good overall view of what he's been trying to say with his previous books. So if anybody audience listening right now can go to my website and they can click on the link Anunnaki Plan or the Synthesis Plan, and there are instructions on my website on how to order those books.
Oh, so those two are available.
They are available. They are direct, and they come directly from Chris and his wife.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. I will do that first thing after this interview. So I'm not going to ask you about those books. I need to read them. But what you said is absolutely correct. Conspiracy theory is a term that they started to discredit people they know the truth or seeking the truth. I agree with that. And as far as Anunnaki and the ancient alien goes, I think there is a lot of these days they call it misinformation or disinformation around about those things. But
those people have no idea. Those people have absolutely no idea.
Is it better or worse than what we know? We be scared or no? There are still some hope there.
The information on the Anunnaki is only 1/6 of the puzzle, just 1/6. The Anunnaki, okay, I guess we're going to dive into this with the Project Human Extinction. The Anunnaki are but one faction of a much larger group of aliens that are here. And yes, audience, aliens are already here. They've been here for years. There's no reason to fear them, except this group is particularly bad. But anyway.
Okay, that would be another conversation.
that would be another conversation.
Definitely,
but anyway,
we have to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
I fully understand this may stretch into more than one podcast interview. Absolutely, because the information is just that intricate. But with regards to Project Human Extinction, when I bought the book many years ago, I read it from cover to cover, and it was shocking. I have not sat down and read it again. So there are some specifics in here that I'm a little light on at the moment. But basically what it boils down to is that it gives an in-depth overview of who is running the world and why. Now, everybody seems to think it's the WEF or Klaus Schwab or Bill Gates or the Davos crowd or whatever. They are involved, yes. But there is something much more sinister that is sitting at the very top. And that's basically what it boils, and that's basically what the book goes into, is all of the specifics about it.
What we see, you're saying, is like a tip of the iceberg?
Oh, yeah.
Sitting on top, you have characters like Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and all their minions, such as Fauci and everybody else up there. But so how deep can you go and tell us, not to give away the entire, plot of the book, but how much more can you tell us?
Where to begin? We could start at the very beginning. 1776, I believe. If you want to talk about the beginning of the Illuminati.
Okay.
At its inception, there was an incident that took place. One of the people that was involved in the Illuminati was a gentleman by the name of Adam Weishaupt.
Yes.
And this guy, as they were in the process of building the Illuminati and putting it together and having their meetings and gatherings, Adam Weishaupt died suddenly. And what shocked the members was there was an entity that reanimated his body.
Wow.
Yeah. And whenever I'm speaking about the Anunnaki, and I said they are one faction of 6, there is a larger group of aliens called the Velon.
Yes.
And they're in all of the radio, the telephone interviews that Chris has gone through that's on my list. Anyway, the Velon have the Anunnaki, the Hathor, Junda, Jonan, Mila, and Wa, I think is the name of it. There are 6 factions of these aliens. I couldn't tell you what star system they come from.
Sure.
It's however many star systems past the Pleiades is what I understand, but that's something I haven't read in a while. The Velon are a race that kind of showed up around 300 years ago outside of our solar system. And the story is very long and very intricate as to why they came here, but they became very, very interested in us and our planet. And one very, very large entity took over and animated the body of Adam Weishaupt, which is where you're going to have a lot of people who are conspiracy theory investigators. When they start talking about people who worship a black sun or they worship Lucifer, blah, 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 all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That is basically what that entity did when it was a walk-in. And it took over Adam Weishaupt's body and basically called itself Lucifer. But this entity, it was a very, very large and powerful entity. I'm talking something that's larger and powerful, more so than humans or even normal aliens or whatever.
Sorry to interrupt you. When you say large, are you talking about the physical size, like a giant, or size in terms of power? When you say size, exactly.
You have to speak in terms of souls.
Okay.
Our universe is full of souls. There are human souls. There are alien souls. Mother Earth is a soul in her own.
Yeah.
All of the planets in our solar system are souls in their own right. We have a very, very, very unique solar system. It's different than any other solar system in the entire universe. So each of the individual planets, including our sun, are all individual souls in their own right. And when I tell you that what animated Adam Weishaupt's body as a soul, I'm speaking in terms of the soul that animated his body was the size of an entire solar system. It was a solar system-sized soul. If you can wrap your head around that, I'm not kidding.
That's very true. Yeah.
So imagine the power that something. Yeah. Imagine the power. So that's what took over the Illuminati and has been directing things in the Illuminati ever since 1776. And all of this is recorded in the Akashic.
Okay. And Chris was a person who could inquire information from Akashic records and he would receive the answers.
Yes.
Okay.
He did it one time. He no longer has the ability, but he did it at one time, yes.
How the information gets recorded in Akashic?
The way he describes it is energetic swirls. He said everything in the universe is energy. There are different levels of energy, but that the Akashic records and they look like energetic swirls. They also happen to resemble chakras. If anyone has ever actually been able to view a chakra, they look like spirals. It's an energetic spiral. So that anything that is recorded in the Akashic is recorded as an energetic spiral. That's how he describes it. I wish I had the power to see this stuff myself. I am just going by all of the information that I've collected from him and listened to him about. There are also several levels of the Akashic. There is a human level Akashic, which is like the collective consciousness of all of us. There is a planetary level of the Akashic that kind of sits on top of that records everything that happens with Mother Earth. There is a solar system Akashic that's on top of that records everything that takes place in this solar system. There is a galaxy level Akashic that records everything that goes on in our galaxy. And then there is a universe level Akashic that records everything that goes on in the universe. And each of these levels, one on top of the other, are all strung together with threads of energy. So if something happens in the planetary area and it connects to the solar system, you will have threads or tapestries or things like that interconnecting all of the information. Also, too, this may come as a shock to you and to most of your listeners. that there is not a God to be worshipped as far as this universe is concerned, but we do have a creator.
Yes.
And the creator does not require worship, but it does have a recording device so that it knows exactly what's going on in the universe that it created and what's going on with all of its creations.
Do we know from this information what's the purpose of life?
The way Chris describes it is that our creator had a thought, and the thought was, what if?
I love that.
And
okay.
It created our universe first, because it's created several. And our universe, the energy patterns, or what is it that he called it? That when he created the universe, it was like a divine breath. That's how he describes it. And the energetic pattern for our universe is freedom of choice. Every soul within the universe can act with freedom of choice for itself, but it cannot act in any way to remove freedom of choice from any other soul.
Is that what we call it, karma? If you try to do that, universe gets back at you?
No, that's a misunderstanding of karma. That's another Sanskrit word, and karma just means knowledge. Karma is what we have been doing for the last 7,000 years. 7,000 years ago, we put ourselves into something called the human plan, and this is one of Chris's books. And the human plan was 7,000 years long. We set ourselves a 7,000-year plan for us to try and figure out why we lost all of our abilities, because thousands and thousands of years ago, humans were a little more powerful than, say, we are right now.
Psychically or spiritually?
Oh, yes.
Or physically? Psychically, okay.
Psychically, physically, it's difficult for me to describe because I'm not a full soul human. Chris became a full soul human for a short period of time, and then Mother Earth asked him to come back and help, which he did. I mean, he literally reintegrated all of the whole of the soul back into his body, and Mother Earth asked him, please come back and help and spread the information, and so he did, and he paid for it dearly. But basically, the 7,000-year plan was us trying to figure out why we could not get our entire souls into our bodies, because the human soul is roughly about 50 dimensions in size. And right now, we are operating, Mother Earth looks at us as subhuman because we are operating with our souls in two pieces. We have 1/4 of our soul in the body operating the body, and then 3/4 of the body is attached by chakras.
Okay.
So we are not full soul humans, and me trying to describe to you what a full soul human is would be useless because I don't know. I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what we're in right now.
Yes. Okay. I remember somewhere on your website, I read about attempts on Chris's life, or he was injected with something. What was that story about?
Yeah. This doesn't really have anything to do with this. The first time he was attacked, it doesn't really have anything to do with the aliens he was investigating. He didn't really describe exactly what he was doing or where he was doing, but he got remote viewed. And the remote view, I don't know if it was one remote viewer that was really powerful or if it was a room full of them. But anyway, he didn't really like being checked in like that with a remote view. And what he did is that he turned around and then he followed where the remote viewer came from. And it turned out to be some underground base of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, something. I don't know. I don't remember exactly where it was. But he followed the remote viewing back to them and remote viewed them. And he sent an energetic surge. This is how powerful the man was at one time. He sent an energetic surge back through the remote view. And the way he describes this is that he didn't intend to send that much energy, and he didn't intend to make the mess that he did. But apparently he blew up some computer components and made a big mess in the underground base. And within about 24 to 48 hours, the CIA was dispatched to his house. And
Wow.
they knocked him out, and they injected him with a very, I don't know if it was some kind of radioactive isotope or something that was going to give him a rare form of liver cancer, which would have killed him within 6 weeks. And when he was asked about it, he goes, well, weren't you aware that, they came to your house and everything? He said, no. He said the CIA actually has some kind of form of spray that can knock people out. And when he woke up, he had a hypodermic needle or a puncture wound in his arm. And luckily enough, since he was such a powerful healer, he got rid of whatever it was that was in his body that would have given him liver cancer. That was the first time he was attacked. The second attack was far worse, and I'm really not going to go into the specifics of that because that was not perpetrated on him by humans. And if anybody is listening to this, do not feel sorry for him. Do not send him prayers. Do not send him healing energy. He requests that you not do that because the energy can be twisted to hurt him further. Do not.
Yes, and when we were sending back and forth emails, when you mentioned that, I said, I'll pray for him. When you mentioned that, don't pray that, I started looking more at the site, and it did make sense to me. So if you're listening to this, please don't do that. We know your intentions are good. And you mentioned remote viewing and the fact that someone that is being remote viewed could look back, and it has to be an extremely powerful person. I had, heard about Ingo Swann, which was a prominent participant in remote viewing back in 80s, 90s. And in his work also, he mentions that sometimes he was viewing someone or someplace, and a person from that location started looking at him, which sounds very creepy.
Yeah. It goes both ways. Yeah. In fact, that movie, what is it? Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yes.
That's not fiction. That is not fiction. That is true.
I have to go back and watch that with George Clooney, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. This I love this conversation. I appreciate the time. So let me ask you this. In human extinction, what's the ultimate plan? What are they trying to do? To depopulate the earth completely, destroy the humanity, annihilate humanity? And what would be the reward? Are they trying to conquer the earth, or what's the plan here?
The idea behind it is that when the Velon discovered that this planet existed, when they arrived here, they studied us. They did a whole lot of studying. They wanted to see what Earth was all about, what humans were all about, stuff like that. Because when they arrived here, they didn't automatically just take over the Illuminati. They studied us. They studied our religions. They studied just everything about human life, history, things like that. This is where it comes into the freedom of choice thing that our universe is made of. I can't remember exactly how they did this, but they started putting recording devices in people's bodies. This is how Chris found out about the Velon, because he wasn't actively researching aliens in the Akashic. He actually stumbled across the Velon because he had people that were coming to him because they had these energetic implants in their bodies, and they were messing with the body template. And it was, creating havoc in people's lives and their health and everything. And when he discovered these energetic implants, he started removing the implants to heal these people. That got the attention of the Velon, because when the Velon arrived here, they put the recording devices. There's descriptions and pictures in one of the books of what he actually saw, and they're really, really creepy looking. There's like a recorder in the base of the spine, and there's like a recorder in people's throats and stuff like that. And the Velon were actively putting them into people's bodies without their knowledge and without their consent, which is a big no-no in a universe of freedom of choice. that's where he found out about them, and that's where his problems started with them. And once they discovered that he was removing the recording devices, that's when they started to attack him psychically. And it was a constant thing going on. It was a constant battle for him. But what the Velon want is that this gets back into him getting into their history. Let me see if I can condense this. Like I said, it's very intricate information.
Of course. Take your time.
The Velon pretty much kept to themselves in their own solar system for all of their existence. And somehow or another, a group of them in ships were doing something in their universe, and they happened to discover an energy flow, is all I can tell you. And when they discovered the energy flow, they followed it a little bit to find out where it was going, and there was this is how Chris describes it. It was a revelatory moment, and sort of like a religious moment for them, that this energy was going to this area of the universe and they had to investigate it. And so all of them, the 6 factions, all decided that they were going to be the first one to find out where this energy was going. And they all built these ships, and then the entire Velon race, including the soul of its solar system and the soul of one of its planets, all decided to gather themselves up and head for Earth, because somehow or another, and this comes from Chris and what he read from the Akashic, because he actually got into their Akashic, the Velon Akashic, that they all decided they wanted to come to Earth, and that they decided that they were God's chosen people, is the best that he could come back with as an explanation as to why this entire race of beings decided they wanted to leave their solar system and then just head to Earth, because they wanted to be on Earth because they were God's chosen people. How they came up with that, he doesn't really understand, and neither do I. So the entire Velon race parked their butts outside of our solar system and didn't realize that there was going to be guardians in the solar system that wouldn't let them in.
Fascinating. Okay.
And Project Human Extinction goes in depth into them being outside of our solar system, studying us, taking over the Illuminati, and making plans on wanting the Earth for themselves and us off of it.
Okay, that's the ultimate plan, us off of it.
They want us off of this planet because they see that the planet belongs to them.
Because they are the chosen race or chosen group.
Somehow or another, they got it in their heads that this was God's this special planet. We are like on the backside of the universe in the middle of nowhere, seriously.
That is true, yes. Mm-hmm.
And they were like, when they saw this massive energy flow in the middle of the universe going to this planet, it was like, oh, we found the energy. We were meant to find it. We were meant to follow it. Therefore, it carried us here to this planet. This is our planet, and we demand to, we're God's chosen people, and we want to be on God's chosen planet because it's a special planet. And that's basically what this book is about, is how they are taking over everything and how they've infiltrated some stuff. And if I remember correctly, it may also cover them going back in time. That's a whole different issue too.
Sure. So are there any of these groups benevolent, or they all have their own agendas, or they all working for the same goal and they have one purpose?
Well, if you're talking about the Velon, the 6 factions of them have actually fought amongst themselves because each one of the 6 factions wants to be the ones to claim Earth. I will give you this much. I mean, there is some good news in all of this, is that the entire race is actually most of the race is gone. There's only a few. There are only a few of the Velon left. That's also getting into another story. They were actually banished from the universe and put into a solar system that was adjacent to this universe because of all the trouble that they caused. But there are still some that are left here that can cause problems. But I think Chris said that the Velon numbered up into about 22 billion at one time, and most of them are gone. Most of them left peacefully. They realized that they had gotten ahead of themselves, but there are some militant ones that refuse to leave, and they're still here. So there's good news and there's bad news in that. Now, if you're asking me about other alien races, I can cover those pretty quickly.
Yes, please. I want to know if there is any benevolent groups in there. But since we're in this object of alien, my question is, so when you said good news, what we see today that's going on on our planet almost everywhere, all the talks about Great Reset and all the doom and gloom and end of the world talks, does it have to do with their plan, or that's something else?
Nope, that's them.
Okay.
Everything ultimately rolls back to them because they want us off the planet. The depopulation agenda was basically their idea to get us off the planet, and the people that are running the planet right now are working with them because they have been promised eternal life. We can make you live longer.
Thank you. Yes. Mm-hmm.
As a perfect example of this, I'm going to give you something else that's a little shocking piece of information.
Sure, please.
I'm trying to remember the year. I don't know if it was 2008 or 2009, but one of those years, 2008 or 2009, George Washington just died. Everybody believes in all of our history that George Washington died back in the 1700s, blah, blah. No,
Mm-hmm.
George Washington was part of the Illuminati, and George Washington was helping the Villain, and there was, an accident that Chris discovered when some information appeared in the Akashic. There was an accident in 2008 and 2009. I'm trying to remember the details, but there was an explosion, and it was on the side of a mountain in Virginia, rural Virginia. And it was because some energy patterns were broken. And when the energy patterns were broken, there was some information that was released to the Akashic that Chris discovered. And one of the things he discovered was George Washington and all of the original members of the Illuminati exploded because the energy patterns were broken. When the V-line rolled up here, everybody that was associated with the Illuminati in the 1700s were still alive up until that point.
Wow, that's shocking. And it's known that George Washington was a Freemason.
Oh yeah,
It's nothing that government or anybody wants to hide that. But I believe Illuminati, in fact, recruited a lot of Masons in their first years, and it started from recruiting those people that are sort of educated into the cult, and then bring them into Illuminati.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They were all tied together.
They were all tied together. So let's go back to those factions of aliens and tell us about those guys. Are there any good ones in there? Are there any of these groups helping humans in any ways, or no?
Well, let me give you an overview of how many races are in the universe.
Go
Basically, there are 13 races. That's all there is. There are only 13 races of life in the universe. The first 6 are considered to be non-physical. In other words, our souls, basically most everybody on the planet are of the non-physical souls. There are 6 different non-physical soul races, and if you encountered them, you basically wouldn't be able to tell them apart. But there are 6 distinct non-physical races, and most of us are them here on this planet. We are all in human form, and our souls are encased in bodies. We build bodies whenever we use a template, and we build a body whenever a baby is growing in a mother.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are 7 semi-physical races. The Velon are one. Another group are the Greys. Everybody's heard of the Greys. Those are the ones that get all the bad raps for abducting humans and stuff like that. Chris will tell you that most of the abductions are taken place by our military, but the Greys were allowed to abduct some people because they wanted to investigate the human body type, because the Greys feel like their bodies are not very well made for whatever reason. They think their body types are not good, and they were investigating the human body to see if there was something that they could learn about us and our body types to help them. They work in conjunction with a group called the Blues. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the Blues, but the Blues and the Greys kind of run around together, and the Blues are geneticists and are helping the Greys, and some of the Blues have also abducted some humans. In fact, Chris Thomas was abducted twice. Once they kept him knocked out and he didn't really know about it, and then the second time they came after him, he made sure that he was awake and said, well, while you're here, can I have a view of one of your spaceships? And he said they were absolutely delighted, and they let him aboard the ship, and he got a tour of the ship and all of this stuff. And he calls them, they were an interesting bunch of people. So Chris has already encountered the Blues, and the Blues usually, a lot of times Blues will work with healers here on the planet. The Greys and the Blues right now, as of the year 2000 or 2002, maybe 2000. Anyway, the Blues and the Greys were asked by Earth to leave because they were just causing too much problems. Chris actually describes the Greys as being like teenagers. They do things and they don't really realize how much trouble that they're causing. Roswell was the Greys. In fact, I think Chris told me that when the crash happened in Roswell, there were 12 other ships that came down that day because our military were testing some kind of weapon or something.
12 ships.
12 ships came down that same day, yeah. But they were all Greys. But the Blues and the Greys right now have been asked to leave. They're kind of parked outside of the solar system monitoring things. So there we have the Velon, we have the Greys, we have the Blues. The next group are the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians have been here from the beginning. These are what a lot of people would say. Those are they call them the tall white Nordics. I think some people have seen them. The Pleiadians are the ones that they're called the diplomatic corps. These are the ones that you're going to find reports of where there are spaceships over missile silos.
Yes,
because
because
they want to make sure that we don't blow ourselves up.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember who it was that did it, but I think NASA some years ago decided they wanted to fire a nuclear bomb to the moon or a rocket or something just to see what would happen.
Yes, I think that was the CIA had a plan to nuke the moon.
Yeah, and the Pleiadians stepped in and disassembled the nuke to make sure it wouldn't blow up. The Pleiadians are basically here to make sure we don't blow ourselves up. They're the diplomatic corps. They're involved in everything.
Okay.
The next group are the Syrians. The Syrians look like Greys, but they're much taller. There is a book, I've got the book in the house somewhere, where there is a tribe in Africa called the Dogon tribe. Yes. And they have a lot of contact with the Syrians, and they found, NASA found out that the Dogon had star charts and stuff like that they'd never seen before because the Syrians gave them star charts, so they knew more about astronomy in certain areas that even NASA didn't know about. So the Syrians are here.
Yes.
The Syrians in this universe are described as the tool makers. They can make anything. So let's see who's next. Then we have the group that we don't have a name for. The human voice box can't pronounce it, and there's not really a name that Chris could come up with, but this group comes from, they're named the NGC 584, and the NGC 584 are the master geneticists. NGC 584 is their catalog number for their solar system. Like I said, nobody knows what their names are. These folks are like 2 feet, 3 feet tall. They sort of look like human children if you ever saw one. They're really, really short little things, but they're master geneticists. These are the ones that have been working with Mother Earth long before we even got here.
Wow.
Their planet is like a frozen ball of ice, and they have genetic records of everything that has ever existed in this universe. They keep samples of all genetic material on all planets in all galaxies and all in the universe. They've got records of everything. Chris says that they have the utmost integrity, and they just want to help any planet that wants to have help developing life forms or anything like that. They've been working with Mother Earth for thousands and thousands of years. They've also assisted her when our human body type was being developed. So she worked with them. That's where Lemuria comes in. Lemuria was here when back when the Earth was going through a much colder period, and they needed to do some research. She asked for the help and said, the humans that I've got on my surface they're not evolving as fast as they should. Why? And so they came down and they went to Lemuria, and Lemuria was closer to Antarctica, and it was a frozen section, and they did some work, and they never really came up with any answers as to why we weren't evolving fast enough.
Yes.
But anyway, and so they left, but they hang around. They're here. They've been here the whole time. Then there's one more race that nobody will ever see because they can't leave their home planet, and that race are called crystallines. They project their consciousness to see and do whatever they want to do throughout the universe, but they either live as singular crystals or they live in families of crystals. But the crystallines are pretty much they're connected to their planet and they can't leave, but they energetically have their consciousness all over the universe.
Wow.
Those are the 13 races that are in this universe, but there's billions upon billions of everything.
Of course. So I have a couple of questions since you talked about these 13 races. One is, you said something, they ask the Earth. So when you say ask the Earth, someone on Earth or some organization or something on Earth, in fact, is in communication and constant contact with these races, or how that communication works? What's the channels for that communication?
You mean between Earth and the other races?
Yeah.
Oh, they just talk to her.
And who they talk to? They talk to the U.S. government. It's the Russian government. Is there some specific people that they talk to, or how do they do this?
Well, now the alien races do communicate with the government. I mean, we've got grays here. There are some blues and grays that are still here that were already on the planet before before the Earth asked all of them to leave. The ones that were already here, she let them stay. I mean, they pretty much talk to our governments. Yeah, governments all over the planet. I mean they're here. They're in underground bases and. Yeah, they talk to our government, but as far as the aliens talking to Mother Earth, they talk to her too.
Okay. Yeah, because as you mentioned before, Earth is spirit.
Oh yeah, she's a great big soul. She sure is. And all the people freaking out about all of the global warming and all of that stuff, they're like, oh, it's the human, it's the CO2 and cow farts and
Yeah.
We've made a mess. And Mother Earth knows that we've made a mess, and she loves us being here. She likes having her human people. She loves us. She loves us very much, even though we have made a great big fat mess. But I got news for you folks. The warming of the weather is Mother Earth herself, because Mother Earth, thousands upon thousands of years ago, used to be much warmer than she is now. In fact, the North Pole was never frozen thousands of years ago. That's where you've got the the reports about the finding woolly mammoths that were flash frozen that still had food in their mouths. Yeah,
fresh vegetables in their mouth. Yes.
Yes. That what happened to Mother Earth there was that was when we sank Atlantis. When we opened up the Atlantic Trench and sank Atlantis. It messed. Let's see. It rocked her on her. I think Chris said it rocked her on her equatorial axis, not her polar axis. She didn't rock on her polar axis. It was equatorial.
Okay.
In other words, it spun her side to side, and it really messed up with the weather and everything. And there was a flash freeze, and that's where the woolly mammoths were frozen, and everything up north was frozen. That's where the North Pole was frozen, because prior to that, the North Pole was never frozen. It was subtropical.
That's very true. And in fact, I believe that was the same event that caused the angle that Earth has around, with its axis 23.5 degrees, that causes North Pole to be frozen.
The tilt.
The tilt. Exactly. The tilt.
Which she's in the process of trying to right herself, because she's actually supposed to be upright. She's not supposed to be tilted. What is it, 23 degrees? She's trying to right herself.
Oh,
And
yeah.
also, too, all of the volcanic eruptions that we've been seeing, she's been trying to strategically have volcanic eruptions in certain places that will do the least amount of damage to the people, because she's trying to expand. Earth used to be much bigger. She actually shrank after Atlantis went under and kind of shut down for a while because and it took a while for her to come back from that, because that was pretty bad. But she's in the process of trying to warm herself back up and to stretch out. And in order to do that, she's got to move some plates and do some volcanic eruptions and kind of vents and stuff. But she's trying to get bigger.
Yes. So basically what you're saying is global warming is what Earth is doing it's causing it, and it needs to have that. Has nothing to do with us. And
we're actually making
cars
it, we're actually making it difficult for her, because we've got people who have built HARP stations that's trying to flood the planet with extra low frequencies, and there's weather manipulation.
Yes, HARP. Yeah.
Well, I mean, besides HARP, there's also weather weapons too that they're trying to do, and Chris never really came right out and said this, but after all these years of studying his work and in discussions over the years with my global group, we've kind of come to the conclusion that some of this weather change, and we've got to do this, and carbon and everything that they're talking about, is the Velon wanted the Earth to be terraformed a little bit differently from what she is now, because the planets that they come from are very, very different from Earth, and there may have been something that they were involved in as far as the climate is concerned, that they wanted it to be more acclimated for them. So they may be behind some of that. It could be one of those things where they want the Earth to be a certain way, and so they direct the people that they're controlling to change things and try to fight Mother Earth. Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why they developed the HARP stations to flood the planet with extra low frequency is because we're on the cusp of all of us trying to reintegrate the whole of the soul into the body, and as long as we're blanketed with low frequencies, it's sort of a method of keeping everybody on the planet asleep.
Yes.
When we should be raising our frequencies and trying to bring this, because we have our answer. We found out what the problem was. We found out why we couldn't keep the whole of the soul in the body. It was because Earth's frequency herself was too low. So she raised her frequency in March of 2000, which facilitated the explosion that happened in Virginia that killed George Washington, because it broke a bunch of energy patterns when she raised her frequency. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people have watched animals, and animals have seemed to have like almost human-like qualities to them over the last few years. It's because the Mother Earth raised her frequency. And we are trying to wake up. We are trying to evolve. And the heart frequencies and the governments are trying to stop us from becoming full soul humans.
You can tell that we are struggling. It's like a kid trying to start taking, first steps, or grow, and pains of growth. That's very obvious, and you can see that. But the fact is, you have to pay attention, which I think a lot of people, they don't pay attention to the details, and they miss the fact that, hey, I feel like growing. I'm going to another phase of life.
Well, also, too, that's one of the reasons why you've got mass media and televisions and streaming services and all of that stuff, because they're doing their level best to try to keep everybody distracted so that they're not paying attention to what's going on. They want you on drugs. They want you vaccinated. They want you drunk. They want you sick. They want you watching your television. Yes. They want you to eat your GMO food. They don't want you to know what you are. You are a 50-dimension sized soul that is shoved into a body, and you have the ability to put the rest of your soul into your body, but you're totally distracted. We have no idea exactly how powerful we are. Here's a little idea. This is what Chris discovered in his Akashic readings. You know who built the pyramids?
Who did?
We did. We built the pyramids.
Not aliens, definitely.
No, we built them. They're resonance chambers.
I love this one. Yes, we did.
They are resonance chambers. We built the pyramids because we were struggling to keep the whole of our souls in our bodies. And we built the pyramids as resonance chambers where you could step inside and make tones or keys. And the tones inside the resonance chamber or the king's chamber would help facilitate putting the soul back into the body. That's what the pyramids are for. Aliens had nothing to do with it. We built them as, imagine 100 or 200 or 300 people all gathered together and psychically working together and placing the stones together to build the pyramid as a group. They worked as a group. They built the pyramids. We did it. Or our ancestors.
Yes, and this is exactly goes against the general idea of ancient aliens. We humans, we could not build things like this. We were not able to do that. And so based on what you're saying, some of these, let's call it propaganda. Do you see it as a propaganda that there are aliens, they did, you didn't do this, humans couldn't do this? And so what you're saying is those are wrong.
Oh, yeah. All I can tell you is that as far as the VLAN running the Illuminati, they're going to want to disseminate that kind of information down through the mass media to let people know that. That also gets into the Zecharia Sitchin material.
Yes.
Zecharia Sitchin was the one who supposedly read the cuneiform.
Yeah, he translated the first. Yes, that's what he did.
Supposedly, there are other cuneiform scholars that have stepped forward that said he didn't know what he's talking about. So that, getting into that, the story that he translated, let's just say for argument's sake that he translated the cuneiform properly. That there were Anunnaki that are
created humans as a slave race to mine gold for them.
It's a story. That's all it is. Because one of the things that Chris discovered when the cuneiform was translated was that this is a story being dictated to a scribe. In other words, he said, like the Bible, Chris describes the Bible as a people going through time and going from place to place, and they wrote the Bible as they moved around, and it's an historical book.
Yes.
From place to place and what they did and how they did it and stuff like that. These tablets that Sitchin translated, it clearly states each time, this is a story dictated to a scribe. And what happened there is that when the VLAN arrived into our solar system and began to study us, I don't know how many there were, but there were a handful of them that managed, and you can do this with enough energy, they managed to go back in time. They literally put themselves 5,000 years in our past. There was a handful of them. And what they did is they were back in Sumerian times, and they basically walked up to a scribe, tapped him on the shoulder, and said, "We've got a story to tell you." And the scribe typed out the story.
Okay.
What the VLAN were hoping was that they would find the tablets, and when they landed on the planet or tried to land on the planet, that we would welcome them as our creators. That was their hope. The problem was that whenever the cuneiform tablets were written and lost to time, nobody really paid any attention to them until you come forward in time when Zecharia Sitchin starts translating them.
Yes.
But also, the VLAN discovered that even though they used enough energy to go back in time 5,000 years ago, also discovered that once they did that and arrived 5,000 years into the past, they got stuck. because once they landed there, they automatically changed their own timeline.
The timeline, yeah. Grandfather effect, yes.
And behind all that, there's no such thing as multiple timelines. I know there are a lot of people out there that are in the New Age movement, and they talk about multiple timelines. No, there's one timeline. There's only one timeline.
Yeah, multiple dimensions.
Everybody would be confused. Mm-hmm. But because they went back and started doing things in the past, they themselves changed their own timeline, and they got stuck in the past. And they ended up having to move on or hide or something. Eventually, they found themselves, I think, in the Tibet area. The Theosophical movement is basically Velon that were up in the Tibet mountains, channeling information to, I think, H.P. Blavatsky.
Yeah, Madame Blavatsky, yes.
Yep. So the whole Theosophical movement is nothing but Velon garbage.
Which we see that Hitler started tapping into that information and connections there. Vic, this is fascinating. I asked you for 1 hour. We well past an hour, and I looked and said, "Oh my God!" As if we've been talking for 5 minutes. It's so fascinating. I greatly appreciate it. And
it's a lot of information.
It is a lot of information to digest. I want to ask you to come back again and let's have this conversation, and probably a little bit more in depth along this line that we talked. So amazing. I really enjoyed it. Fantastic. And a lot of information to crunch and to process for myself, and I'm sure for some of our listeners that are listening to this. Do you have anything else to add? Or if not, we can end this conversation here and pick it up in a few days and continue this fascinating conversation.
Hey, we can end it right now. It's a lot of information, and there are a lot of threads that lead to other threads, and it can be so intricate. And I'm just giving you the overview of just the basic big parts. There is so much more to it.
So bottom line, to recap this conversation, is Chris Thomas, as a psychic, as a gifted man by the universe, he has his teaching. He talked about different things. One of the important, among other important books that he wrote, was this Project Human Extinction, and we see the effect of that today. The book was written in 2002? When was this book first published?
The book, let's see here, 2009 is when it was published.
2009, 12 years ago, right? And 10 years later, we started seeing that, oh my God, this is in full action, and they are going this time to finish humanity on Earth. It seems like that. And there are so many evidence that point us to that direction. And we see all the governments everywhere are completely synced. Even their talking points and everything else is the same. Amazing book. I wish we could get our hands on this, but now we have you. So we get back to you and we'll have this conversation again.
I may send a question through one of my global members to see if it's possible, if maybe I could read excerpts from it. That might be helpful. I don't know how that's going to work.
That would be wonderful. We can set up some episodes that you read from the book, and we can even discuss it.
Okay. I'll have to check. I will go through my global group and check and see what Chris Thomas says about that.
That would be great. I appreciate it. Vic, thank you again, and I look forward to have many, many, many more hours of conversation with you. Thank you so much.
There's a whole lot to talk about.
You are a fascinating person to talk to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice talking to you too. We'll talk again soon.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.